today is best known for his record-breaking winning streak of 74 straight wins on the third longest-running game show in U.S. history, Jeopardy! After a series of temporary hosts and due to the fact that the beloved Alex Trebek had passed, he was finally given the full-time job as host of Jeopardy! Please welcome Ken Jennings to the program. Ken, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good, good, good. So obviously I want to talk about the game and the games that you have created and Kickstarter and all that good stuff. But before we get into that, my first question is this. Again, 74 straight consecutive victories. That's quite impressive. Over 2,700 correct answers. Let me ask you this. Is there one answer that stands out as maybe just the weirdest or strangest question you've ever had? And what was the most impactful?
I mean, I feel like everybody who's ever been on Jeopardy, which is now a few thousand winners, I guess, will always tell you the same thing, which is winning that first game is everything, because you go in, you're nervous. People watching Jeopardy don't understand how much stress the contestants are under. They're fans of the show, but they suddenly just get dropped into this environment. They kind of have to pick it up on the fly. It's very fast paced, it's challenging, and you're nervous. And I just remember that feeling of getting Final Jeopardy right in my first game. It was about Olympic track and field. And I realized this is it. Like, I did it. I'm going to be a Jeopardy champion. And like, to me, that was the big achievement. Like, it didn't matter as much that I later won, 10 games or 70 games or whatever it was. Like, just that first game, like you're going to be a Jeopardy champion for the rest of your life. And that means a lot.
Now, was that the question in particular about Jones? And you said, what is Jones? And you didn't say, what is Marion Jones? And Alex said, I think we'll accept that one. Is that the one you're referring to, sir?
That's right. Yeah, it was about who had won the most medals in track and field at the 2000 Olympics. And normally I'm a huge Olympics guy, and I was very excited to see the category. And then I realized, like, the 2 weeks of the Sydney Olympics were like the exact 2 weeks that my wife and I had been on our honeymoon, and I had not seen a single event. So I thought, well, this is probably over, but I had a good time. And when I realized, oh, this has got to be Marion Jones, I just wrote down, who is Jones? And this is normally good Jeopardy advice. Don't supply a first name, because, the host will accept who is Eisenhower. You don't need to. And if you invent a first name, you might be wrong, of course. So I just wrote down who is Jones. And I didn't realize until Alex kind of paused for a second that, boy, it kind of looks like I just guessed a name, who is Smith? And
yeah, I was going to say Smith or Jones.
Right, Johnson. And so there is a little pause, but luckily, as I now know, hosting the show, there is a panel of judges over at Stage Right. And they were very quick to give Alex the high sign, like, yes, there's no other Jones it could be. We're going to accept that. It was a tense moment, though.
Gotcha. Let's talk about Alex for a minute. So obviously he's the beloved host, 37 years on the program. You've known him for quite a while, but he didn't have a background in trivia as you have. And what is the most important thing that you've learned as a lesson from him?
It was amazing to watch Alex host Jeopardy in person. Seeing it up close, it was just remarkable. He could do the whole game start to finish in half an hour without a single misstep, a single stammer over a word. He always had the game scenario in his head. He understood the wagers. He understood which clues were hard and which were easy, and why a player might be right or wrong or wager what they did. He had been doing the game for so long. He had this intuitive understanding of it that was unmatched. And it's true that he didn't have the background of a game show contestant like I did, but he was an old school broadcaster who had come up on little Canadian stations doing everything. He had done the music show and the news show and the interview show, and he could just do it all. And he was totally unflappable. And I think the thing I learned from him, he would often say this in interviews, is that he never wanted to be announced as the star of Jeopardy. Like, gotcha. In the 60s, they would introduce Art Fleming and say, and now the star of Jeopardy. And at Alex's own request, he was always the host of Jeopardy. And his reasoning was that the show would not work if he were the star. The star of Jeopardy should be the game, the clues, the players, the responses. Like, that's actually the star of the show. That's what people come back for. And he was 100% right. But it's hard to imagine somebody in Hollywood saying, the spotlight shouldn't be on me, But Alex was right. Less is more. Like, you should really host Jeopardy with a very light touch.
That's very interesting. Now, you grew up in Washington State, but also spent some time in South Korea and Singapore. Where did your love for trivia come from? And what advice could you give to future game show contestants?
Yeah, I was born here in Seattle, but we moved overseas when I was a kid, and my family lived in Asia for 15 years. And I think like to this day, like that's a big part of why I'm kind of such a nut for pop culture and like a real kind of steel trap for trivia is just because we didn't have pop culture. You know, we were half a world living in Korea in the early 80s. You know, we were half a world away from all our friends. You know, the only way we would ever see an MTV music video or a Burger King commercial or an SNL sketch was if somebody brought us a VHS tape from the States. Um, so trivia was kind of a limited quantity for us. You know, pop culture was kind of a scarcity. And so when somebody did know something, we would listen to the tape over and over. Or, you know, I kind of grew up just loving pop culture for that reason. And I really think that ties into the most important thing about being on a quiz show or having that kind of a trivia mind, which is you kind of have to be interested in everything. You know, we live in an age of specialization where, you know, people's jobs are very narrow. People don't talk as much to people with other careers or viewpoints. Even our hobbies, you know, I like this sport, but not this one. I listen to this kind of music, but not that one. And really, trivia people are omnivorous. You know, they're curious about everything. They don't say, please stop talking about jazz. I'm not really interested in jazz. They say, oh, I don't know much about that. Tell me more. You know, like you just you're curious about everything.
Well, it's very interesting that you're as learned as you are, because again, being in another country for 11 years and not getting the pop culture as you would get here in the United States, again, is pretty impressive. I'm kind of going out of my own comfort zone as well, because I do mostly political type of stuff and analyst work and things like that. But I do like to kind of branch out and show that I can do other things as well. Let me ask you this, and then we're going to get into your game. What is the main difference that you find from being a contestant to now being the host of Jeopardy?
You know, I don't have Alex's broadcasting background, and I think that shows, especially when I was kind of starting out hosting. But I did find as I started to host that first of all, I'd seen Alex do it up close, so I kind of had the echo of his phraseology in my ears, so it was kind of easy to think, what would Alex say here? Or what are usually the rhythms of the game when Alex was hosting? And more than that, I just found that the only way I can host is just to kind of play along in my head like I'm the fourth player. Like it's true that I have all the correct responses in front of me now, just like Alex used to. So it's an unfair advantage, but really when I'm hosting the show, I'm not an audiobook reader. I'm actually thinking, oh, hey, like this one's kind of tough. Let's see if they know this about the Civil War. Oh, she got it. That's great. She gets to go again. I'm kind of playing along in my head like that. And because the host has to be a referee, but also a color commentator and, a narrator, he has to do all these things at once. That's what really helps me do it. It's just kind of pretending like I'm still playing the game.
That's interesting too. I like that because, like you said, he did have a background in broadcasting and commentating and things like that. But you do a great job too. Don't cut yourself short there. So let's talk about your games, your trivia games that obviously can be purchased at Walmart and Target and other, Amazon and things of that nature. And it's called Half Truth, and then the new sequel is called Half Truth, Second Guess. Tell us a little bit about these games, if you could, please.
Well, I don't want to take too much credit. Most of the gameplay was devised by Richard Garfield. He's one of the great game designers of our time. He's mostly well known for Magic the Gathering. That was him. But if you're a board game fan, you know King of Tokyo and a lot of his other games. He had never really done a party game like this, but he invited me over and played it through with me. And I loved this his take on a trivia game because he wasn't really a trivia person, and he had addressed the two things that I think people find annoying about trivia games. One is that you're often not playing. Most of the time, if you're playing a trivia game, you're waiting for somebody else to try to remember an answer. Like, okay, it's been 5 minutes. You can't think of the name you can't remember the name of the dog on The Simpsons. Let's go, And the other thing that's annoying about trivia games is sometimes you have to play against somebody who's really good at trivia, you know? And
It's
Richard
interesting hearing the host of Jeopardy say what's annoying about trivia games.
see, I love these games, but people playing against me don't always love them so much for some reason.
Yeah, I wonder why.
And Richard's game had really smartly kind of leveled the playing field. So first of all, everybody always plays at once, so the game has more action. And second of all, you know, somebody with a broad-based knowledge does have an advantage, but everybody kind of feels like they're in the game every round, so that, you know, differences get a little bit flattened and you can make educated guesses. That's why we called the sequel, which is coming out now, Second Guess. And it played like a dream. I think it's a trivia game even for people who think they don't like trivia games.
Gotcha. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. This is, again, a little out of my wheelhouse, but I know that my audience is going to love something like this. It's just kind of a break from the monotony of all the things that are going on in the world. So I really do appreciate you being on. The guest is Ken Jennings. The games are Half Truth and Half Truth Second Guess. Where can they go to support these games and purchase these games?
Games are sold wherever you get your games, but there's a Kickstarter going on, I think, either right now or shortly for Half Truth Second Guess. So check it out. Get in on the ground floor.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again, and good luck to you. And, you know, we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Josh.